My name is Elaine. I'm 61 and I've worked as the office manager at a construction firm just outside Maple Ridge for over a decade. It's not a glamorous job, but it's stable, and stability became everything after my husband passed. I'm the kind of woman people rely on but rarely notice. I remember birthdays, fix broken coffee makers, and know exactly how to process a purchase order without being asked. I don't draw attention. I blend in, and I liked it that way. Until that Thursday. I was organizing the break room when I heard voices in the lobby. Laughter, then a deeper male voice, young confident. A second later, Mr. Gardner, my boss, chuckled. "Come on in, Nolan. Let me introduce you to the team." Nolan, his son. He had interned here over a decade ago, back when he was just a polite college kid in khakis. But when I turned around and saw him now, the breath caught in my chest. He was taller, broader. Dark hair swept back casually, blue eyes sharp with something steady behind them. When our eyes met, he smiled, not just politely, but like he remembered me. "Elaine, right?" he said. "I remember you." I laughed awkwardly. "You've got a good memory. You were just a kid back then." "Yeah," he replied, his gaze holding mine a second longer than necessary. Time changes people. The rest of the day blurred. I sat through meetings I didn't absorb, sent emails I barely read. Every time Nolan passed by, he looked at me not in any inappropriate way, but with the kind of awareness I hadn't felt directed at me in years. It was unsettling and oddly welcome. That evening, as I packed up, I heard my name again. Elaine. He stood in the hallway, jacket slung over one shoulder. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded, uncertain. "Are you happy here?" he asked. "In this job? This life?" The question surprised me more than it should have. "I guess I am," I said. "It's safe." He smiled softly. "Safe isn't the same as happy." And then he left. That night, I lay in bed replaying the moment. His voice. That question. It echoed through me like a quiet song I hadn't heard in years. Was I happy? I wasn't sure I knew how to answer that anymore. If this quiet beginning stirred something in you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply share this with someone who might understand that feeling of being seen again for the first time in a long time. Monday morning, I arrived early, like always. The office was still quiet, just the hum of the vending machine and the rustle of morning papers. I poured a cup of coffee and stood by the window thinking of Nolan's words. Safe isn't the same as happy. I hadn't stopped thinking about it all weekend. A quiet knock pulled me from my thoughts. It was Nolan holding 2 cups from the cafe down the street. "Figured you'd be in early," he said. "Thought I'd bring you the good stuff." I smiled. "You remembered my weakness." He handed me the cup and leaned against the counter. We talked casually about weekend traffic, old office furniture, nothing serious. But beneath it all was something I couldn't name. A warmth. A hum. That afternoon, he stopped by again, this time with a folder in his hand. "Could I borrow you for a bit?" he asked. "My dad says you know how this place actually works." We sat in the side conference room going over project files. I explained invoice flows, scheduling systems, the little quirks that only someone who'd been there 13 years would know. He listened closely, nodding occasionally, asking questions. But more than once, our arms brushed. His eyes lingered. And still, he never crossed a line. "You make this look easy," he said at one point. I smiled faintly. "You learn to keep things steady when life doesn't cooperate." "I like steady," he replied, voice quiet. I felt it then, something shift in the room. Nothing dramatic, just presence. A connection too still and respectful to be called flirting, but real, all the same. I cleared my throat and stood. "That should give you a solid overview." He stood too, but didn't leave right away. "You ever think about doing something else?" he asked. Outside of this, I hesitated. I used to. Then life happened. Bills, loss, routine. He didn't say anything for a moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe it's time to think about dreaming again. That night, as I packed up to leave, I found a small envelope beneath my coffee mug. Inside was a handwritten note. Dinner, just to talk. You pick the place. N. I stood in the quiet, fluorescent-lit office, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. It had been years since anyone invited me anywhere that wasn't family or obligation. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I wanted to say yes. I chose a small bistro on the edge of town. Quiet, dimly lit, the kind of place you go when you want the world to slow down. Michael and I used to come here sometimes. I hadn't returned since he passed. When Nolan walked in, I almost forgot to breathe. He wore a navy shirt, sleeves, casually rolled jeans, not corporate, not formal. Just him. He smiled when he saw me. "This place is perfect," he said. "Feels like time steps back a little." We talked about music, food, places we wanted to visit. Then somewhere between the second glass of wine and a shared laugh about office politics, things shifted. I told him about Michael, about how silence filled our home after he was gone, how I'd filled it with routines, efficient, reliable, but hollow. He listened, not distracted, not performative, just fully there. At one point, I looked up and realized we were leaning closer than before. His expression wasn't playful or coy. It was something quieter, reverent. "I didn't ask you here just to talk about spreadsheets," he said softly. My pulse quickened. I figured I replied, unsure whether to smile or pull away. "There's something about you, Elaine," he continued. "You carry yourself like someone who's been through real things, but still chooses to be kind. That's rare." I didn't know what to say. Compliments had become unfamiliar, especially ones like that. "You're much younger than me," I said finally. He nodded. "I know, and I'm not saying this to complicate your life. I just didn't want to keep pretending I didn't feel it." I turned my face toward the window, watching headlights blur past in the dark. "You make me remember parts of myself I thought were gone," I said. When he walked me to my car, he didn't touch me, just stood close enough that I could feel the quiet certainty in his presence. "I don't want to rush anything," he said. "But if this means something to you too, I hope we can keep talking." I nodded. "I'd like that." That night, driving home with the lavender plant still on the passenger seat and the memory of his voice echoing gently inside me, I felt something stir. It wasn't excitement. It was hope. We didn't declare anything. There were no announcements, no sudden shifts in behavior. Nolan and I kept things quiet, not secret, but private. We still said good morning like everyone else. We still sat on opposite ends of the conference table. But people notice. Whispers started like they always do. A glance that lasted too long. A hallway conversation cut short when I walked by. No one said anything outright, but the tension was there in the sideways glances, in the careful distance some colleagues started to keep. I could feel it building, especially after the spring company gathering. Nolan and I hadn't even sat together that evening. Still, someone saw us on the patio afterward, speaking quietly under the string lights. I didn't think much of it at the time, but the next morning, Meredith from HR requested a meeting. It was cordial, professional, but the subtext was clear. "There have been some perceptions," she said, voice calm, hands folded. "No complaints, just murmurs. We want to be mindful of boundaries, especially given your seniority and Nolan's family connection." She never once said the word relationship. She didn't have to. Afterward, I walked back to my desk with a strange calm. I wasn't embarrassed, not even angry, just tired. Tired of a world that always expected women like me to stay quietly in the background even when our hearts began to wake again. That evening, Nolan found me in the parking lot. He must have sensed something in my face. "They talked to you, didn't they?" I nodded. "I'm sorry," he said. "You don't have to be." "I hate that they treat this like some scandal," he said. "You've given this place more than anyone. You don't deserve whispers." I looked at him. Really looked. There was frustration in his voice, but not shame. Never shame. "I'm not afraid of what they say," I told him. "I'm afraid of what I'll lose if I let it change how I live." He stepped closer. "Then don't." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea thinking of all the times I'd put myself second. All the moments I'd swallowed my own joy to keep others comfortable. I had never been reckless. But maybe just this once it was okay to choose something, not because it was safe, but because it was mine. The promotion offer came in an envelope with my name printed neatly across the front. Inside, a formal letter signed by Mr. Gardner himself. "We'd like to offer you the role of Regional Operations Director." It was the kind of opportunity I hadn't dared imagine in years. A title, a raise, a place at the leadership table. And tucked beneath it all, unspoken but understood, a condition. Professional distance, discretion. The quiet expectation that whatever was unfolding between Nolan and me would not follow me into the boardroom. I sat with it for a full day. At lunch, I stepped out onto the back patio and called Nolan. I read him the letter. "They didn't say it out loud," I said. "But it's there. They want you to keep us hidden." I didn't answer. "You deserve that role," he said. "More than anyone. But at what cost?" He was silent for a moment. "I'll support whatever you decide." I hung up and stared at the horizon. For years, I had lived like life only moved in one direction, forward, upward, predictably safe. But now I wasn't sure that was what I wanted anymore. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat in the quiet of my living room, lavender blooming faintly on the windowsill, and asked myself the question he had once asked me. "Are you happy? Not comfortable. Not respected. Happy." The next morning, I walked into Mr. Gardner's office with the letter in hand. "Elaine," he said, standing. "We're thrilled to—" "I appreciate the offer," I interrupted. "But I'm going to decline." He blinked. "May I ask why?" "Because I'm finally choosing something for myself," I said. "And I'm not going to trade it for a title." He didn't argue, just nodded slowly, as if he understood. That evening, I met Nolan in the same parking lot where all this began. I walked up to him, took his hand in mine, and said simply, "I chose us." He didn't say anything at first, just smiled, the kind of smile that starts in the eyes and settles into something steady. We stood there under the streetlight, not as scandal, not as risk, but as two people who had found each other when neither expected it. I didn't know what came next, but for once, I didn't need a plan. Because I had already lived the version of life that followed all the rules, kept its head down, and never made a ripple. Now I wanted to live the version that made me feel awake again. Thank you for staying with me through the end of this story. If something in it reminded you of yourself, of quiet routines, unspoken sacrifices, or the courage to choose joy again, please consider leaving a comment. I'd love to know what part spoke to you most. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this about love found in unexpected places, second chances, and lives lived quietly but deeply, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It truly means a lot.